everyone. This is attorney Felipe Alexandre. Once again, another podcast bringing you news about immigration law, policy, and life here in the United States. And so people always ask us right before a consultation, hey, what are the many ways that I can immigrate to the United States? Now, some people who follow our channel or they follow other immigration law firms or they do some research, they kind of know maybe what they're looking for, right? If it's a student who has a PhD and they're doing research, okay, they're looking into EB1 or EB2. If it's somebody who's afraid of being in their country and looking at asylum, right? But a lot of people, they are clueless, but they really have that American dream ever since they were a kid, or it's something it's all of a sudden they've been thinking about lately because they just had a baby, right? Everyone is different and they have this American dream at different times of their lives. And some people, they have the genuine desire to come, but they have no idea how they're going to go about it. And so this video, I'm going to talk about three main categories of immigration that we frequently see at our law firms. Again, there might be cases that fall outside of the three, but most of the applications we do, most of the visa applications, most of the relief that we get for our clients are within these three categories. Okay, are we ready? Buckle up, let's go. It'll be quick, it'll be a fast ride. Obviously, each of these cases I can spend an hour talking about, but the purpose of this video is to give you some bullet points. If you're that person who wants to come to America and you have no idea how to come, you haven't looked up the visas, or you've looked them up but you're still a little bit confused, hey, this video is for you. Buckle up, you ready? Let's do it. Okay, so the first category is family immigration. Okay, most people don't have a family member here, but a lot of people do. So I have to explain this part. Family immigration is when you have a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, somebody has a green card, a family member here in the United States who can petition for you. And they might be able to petition for you if you're already here in the United States or if you're in your home country. That is called consular processing if you do it through your home country. If you're here, it's called adjustment of status because you're going to adjust from one status, or in many cases, no status because it's already expired, into the status of being a lawful permanent resident, a green card, okay? So there's something online called the Visa Bulletin. And the Visa Bulletin is very special because, one, it tells us all of the categories of family immigration, and then it tells us how long each category is going to have to wait because some categories have a bigger wait time than others. And so if we look at some of the categories, if you have a U.S. citizen family member, okay, or let's make this simpler. Let's say I'm the U.S. citizen and I want to petition for my family. Who can I petition for as a U.S. citizen? Okay, I can petition for my spouse. I can petition for my children, whether or not they're under 21, over 21, whether they're married. I can petition for my parents if I haven't already said that, and I can petition for my brothers, okay? So U.S. citizen, who can we petition for? Not cousins, not aunts, okay? Not grandparents, but spouse, parent, children, married, not married, under 21, over 21, and my brothers and sisters, okay? That's what I can petition for as a U.S. citizen. Now, let's say I have a green card. Can I petition for family members only with a green card? Yes, but your options will be a little bit limited. They won't be as vast, although it's not too vast. They won't be as many as that of a U.S. citizen. So if you have a green card, you can also petition for your spouse. You can petition for your children, under 21, over 21, but not if they're married, okay? You cannot petition for Baba Mama. You can't petition for Mom and Dad. You can't do it, okay? You have to wait until you're a U.S. citizen. And brothers and sisters, they're going to have to wait until you become a U.S. citizen. You cannot petition for them either. Now, if you look at the Visa Bulletin, some of these categories are relatively quick. And so let me talk about a category called immediate relative. If I'm a U.S. citizen and I want to petition for my spouse, for my parents, or for my children under 21 who are not married, these three, again, parent, spouse, children under 21 who are not married, these are considered immediate relatives. Why is it special? Because they're, in addition to the time that it will take the government to process the application, everybody's going to have to go through that part, okay? But in addition to that, there's not going to be an additional wait time if you're considered an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, okay? So if you're my spouse, you're my Baba Mama, or you're my child under 21 and I'm petitioning for you, Immigration needs time to process the case, but then bam, you can apply for a visa. Okay, and that's what the visa bulletin explains. We can make more videos about it. It's how long you have to wait on top of the regular processing for that initial petition. Okay, so the initial petition, I would, as a U.S. citizen, I would file an I-130 for my spouse, for my parent, or for my child under 21. And once that's approved, then if they're here in the United States, I can actually file the I-130 with an application to adjust the status. It's called a 485. That's the application to get your green card, to adjust your status. And if they're abroad, I do the I-130, and then it's a complicated process where it goes to a place called the National Visa Center, and then they send it to the consulate. And then we schedule an appointment for them. They do what's called consular processing, and they come over to the United States. Okay, so that's the I-130. Everybody else besides the spouse, parent, or child under 21 of a U.S. citizen is not an immediate relative. And so that's what you're looking at the visa bulletin. These categories will tell you from the time that USCIS, which is immigration, received your I-130 petition, there you have what's called a priority date. Okay, that's the date that you're going to follow in the visa bulletin. And in the visa bulletin, you're going to see that depending on the category, wow, this category, they are now accepting green card applications for people whose I-130 was received by USCIS 2 years ago in January. Okay, so that's how that works. So approximately, and the visa bulletin kind of changes all the time, but if, let's say, you are a child of a U.S. citizen, but you're now 21, okay? But you're not married. It's about 5 or 6 years. If you get married, wow, the price of getting married, it's going to be over 10 years. If you're the brother or sister of a U.S. citizen, my friend, you're going to wait about 14 years. So it can be a long wait. But there are other categories of immigration, all right? A very popular one we see is through marriage, right? You've seen 90 Day Fiancé. That's one way to do it. I don't recommend it. We'll talk about K visas later because it kind of puts a requirement that you have to get married within 90 days. But some people do it and they live happily ever after, or at least happily ever after until their second divorce. So there's ways to do it. But we have a lot of clients who do marriage-based adjustments. The generous part of being a relative of a U.S. citizen, and if you fall under the immediate relative category, so if you are the parent, the spouse, or child under 21 of a U.S. citizen, the generous part of the law is that if you're here in the United States and you no longer have status, okay, you came in on a visa and now you don't have status, you can still be rescued essentially by your U.S. citizen child or spouse, okay, or parent if you're under 21. All right. So it forgives unlawful presence and it forgives having worked here without a work permit. Everybody else doesn't receive that forgiveness. And so what does that mean for everybody else? If you're not a spouse, parent, or child under 21 of a U.S. citizen, okay, if you're the brother of a U.S. citizen, if you're a child over 21 of a U.S. citizen, if you're a child married of a U.S. citizen, or if you're the spouse of a lawful permanent resident or child of a lawful permanent resident, what does that mean for you? That means that if you are going to adjust status in the United States, in other words, you want to wait for the whole process here and you would like to go to a local interview here as opposed to in your home country, you have to maintain lawful status during your whole time in the United States. During your whole time. You cannot have had unlawful presence. So how does that work? Let me give you an example. Somebody comes here on a tourist visa. They say, you know what? After 90 days or 4 months, they're like, I want to stick around. So then what they do is they do a change of status. They go from being a tourist to being a student, right? Let me stick around, let me study, let me improve my English, and let me start college. Let me do something. I like it here. I'm not quite sure where my life is going to take me, but I know that my future is here in America. They become a student and they study for a few years. And while they're waiting, let's say, the parent petition for them, but they're over 21 or whatever it is. If by the time the visa bulletin says, hey, you can apply for your green card, if they still have lawful status and then they apply for the green card and the green card interview comes around and they still have lawful status, then they can do it. Okay. Otherwise, they would probably have to do consular processing, although everything is case by case. Okay. So in a nutshell, because we can make lots of other videos about this, that's family immigration. Okay. So U.S. citizen, parent, spouse, child under 21. These are immediate relatives. In addition to that, not immediate relatives would be my married child or a child over 21 or my brother. In addition, not immediate relatives, but I have a green card. I can petition for my spouse and for my child who's under 21 or over 21, but not a married child. Got it? Bada bing, bada boom. All right, so let's go to the next one, which is humanitarian immigration. Okay, so a few categories. One, the most popular, the one we see the most humanitarian immigration cases is asylum. And we can talk about asylum forever because it's very complex. There's several nuances and several elements, but essentially asylum is an international protection for people who are afraid, who have been persecuted or are afraid of being in their home countries. And I say international because it's a body of law that the United States also adopted and made it into their own laws. And so now U.S. asylum law, it's very complex. It's, yes, you have some international principles, but you have statutes, you have regulations, and you have case law. Okay, the federal courts also have jurisdiction over asylum appeals. And so in the United States, we have several circuit courts depending where you live. For example, if you live in California, you're in the Ninth Circuit. If you live in New York, you're in the Second Circuit. If you live in Jersey, you're in the Third Circuit. If you live in Florida, you're in the 11th Circuit. If you live in Utah, you're in the 10th Circuit. Okay, so there's different circuits, and based on certain nuances, sometimes the circuits don't quite agree with one another. And so that's the whole body of asylum law. And actually, the circuits have jurisdiction over other types of immigration cases as well. So what is asylum? Get to it, Felipe, right? Asylum is protection for someone who has been persecuted in their home country or has what they call a well-founded fear of being persecuted in their home country. So that's number one. Persecuted, or you're really afraid of being persecuted and you have a well-founded fear, right? It's not just a random belief. You have good reason to believe why you believe this. You can show the court or you can show the asylum officer. Two, you have to show that this fear is linked, right? Or this persecution is linked. In other words, why did they persecute you? Or why will they persecute you if you return to your home country? It cannot be a business dispute usually, right? It cannot be because you married the guy's girlfriend. Usually those will not fall within the protected grounds of asylum. So what are the protected grounds of asylum? I thought you never asked. Here we go. Let's do this. So one, the one we see probably the most, political opinion. All right. You manifest a political opinion that goes against the majority or goes against the minority, and they're looking to kill you, looking to jail you. Okay. So corruption, you identify and you criticize corruption in your home country. All right. That is a form of political opinion. All right. Number two, religion. Okay. You are persecuted because of practice of your faith, religion. Three, race. Clear enough. Four, nationality. What is nationality? I will give you an example. If you're familiar with the People's Republic of China, right? So the communist China, right? There are two territories in China, or now we can even say I would say three now, or more. I could be missing. That we would check off nationality now when we apply for asylum for people that come from China and come from those territories. One, it would be Xinjiang. Xinjiang is a territory where there is a majority Muslim population, and they feel that they are part of a country called East Turkestan, and I believe they feel that they were overtaken in 1949. Two, you have Tibet. And the Tibetan, a lot of them are Buddhist, and they believe in the Dalai Lama, and they were taken over in the 50s. Again, all these people have their own different language and different culture and religion. And number three now, recently, in the past few years, you have Hong Kong, okay? So these are people with their own identity. They feel like they belong to almost like a country within a country, and they want some sort of independence. They want their culture and their language and their religion to be respected by the main government, right? And so that would be a form of nationality. And number 5, it's the more fun one. It's whenever we don't get the other 4, we try to fit it into number 5. This is particular social group. You are a member of a particular social group. What the heck is that? Well, courts have tried to define it. Let me underline and bold the word try. They have said that a social group is someone who is distinct, who is socially distinct. And because of that social distinction, because of that trait or characteristic that stands out to everybody in your society, somebody persecuted you because of it, or they will persecute you because of it. And so some PSGs, as we call them, particular social groups that have been approved by the courts, but again, you can make whatever arguments you want to make. For example, homosexuals. In matter of Toboso Alfonso, okay, it was a Cuban case that was recognized as a PSG. You have former police officers, like in matter of Fuentes, okay, that is a PSG because it is a characteristic that you can't erase. It has to be a characteristic that you cannot erase or that you should not be required to erase, right? So in the case of Toboso Alfonso in Cuba, can he stop being homosexual, right? Or he shouldn't be required to do it. Even if it was possible, he shouldn't be required, right? Members of some tribes, okay? Matter of Kasinga, which is a BIA, Board of Immigration case, that one held that women who are at risk of being, who will suffer female genital mutilation can be part of a PSG. So PSG, that's where you get your creative juices going and you argue to the judge, hey, this is a very unique case. We've won some really interesting ones. There was one PSG we won. We argued that the young man was an Americanized Mexican, and therefore he would stand out if he were to go back to Mexico. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself, he was totally American. And we won. We won the case. Very complex case, but we won that case. That's just one example. Okay. So persecution. You've been persecuted, or you're going to be persecuted. 2. It has to be because of one of the grounds: political opinion, religion, race, nationality, membership in a particular social group. And then that persecution has to be done or carried out by governments or by an organization or individuals that the government is unwilling or unable to control. All right. So first it's government. If it's the police, or if it's the army, that is clearly government, right? There are a lot of our Chinese cases. I speak Mandarin if you didn't know. Clearly government. Then you have a lot of our Central American cases. It's not clearly government, but they are forces that the government is either not willing or not able to control. So for willing, we point to a lot of corruption cases. You have like the Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13 in Central America, and they essentially bribe the police officers. And the police officers who don't want to accept the bribes, they murder them, right? So the government is not willing to control them because they're getting bribes. And those that want to control them, they're not able to control them because they get their limbs chopped off, right? So that's how we prove that part. Okay, so essentially that's asylum in a nutshell. In a nutshell, we love asylum. We can talk about it all day long. How do you apply for asylum? You need to enter the United States. Okay, you need to be here, regardless of how you got here. You're here in the U.S. and you have to apply within 1 year of coming to the U.S. Okay, I'm going to stop now because I can keep talking about asylum. Asylum is very important. If you fear any of these things that we've talked about, if there's a reason that you fear being in your home country or you're here in the United States already and you don't want to go back because you fear A, B, and C, and based on what you heard me say, oh, I'm not sure if I qualify. He mentioned business disputes wouldn't do it, so I can't do it. No. I say generally, but I've won some crazy cases. So if you're afraid, give us a call. If you're genuinely afraid of going back to your country, give us a call and we'll see if your facts can be argued to be a particular social group or another one of the protected grounds. All right, cool. We'll make some more detailed videos on asylum. We love it. But from now, I'm going to move on. Another humanitarian visa or relief that we frequently get for a client is something called the U visa. U. Okay, why is that? Because it's in subsection 101A15U of the Immigration Nationality Act. And so that's why it's called the U visa. And essentially, the U visa is meant to encourage the immigrant population to reach out, to call the police when a crime happens. Why? Well, because you have criminals who are smart and they know that immigrants are vulnerable. They know that immigrants are afraid of getting deported. And so because of that, immigrants are the least likely to report a crime. Crime happens, oh, but la migra, I'm going to get deported, or I don't want to talk to the police, and they don't end up reporting the crimes. And so this statute was written to encourage immigrants and to tell immigrants that not only are we not going to deport you if you report a crime, depending on the severity of the crime, and depending on how much you suffered, and depending on how much you help us out in catching the perpetrator, we might even give you a visa or a immigration status to remain in the United States. How about that, amigo? That is pretty good, right? So here's what you have to prove. One, a crime occurred, and the crime has to be on the list of the U visa, okay? But essentially, most major crimes are there, right? If you were assaulted, sexual assault, extreme acts against you are there, right? So you suffered what's called a qualifying crime. Then you suffered either physically or mentally or both, okay? You can prove that suffering, hospital, medication, you went to the shrink, etc. And three, you were available to help. Hey, Detective Jones, you want to know more about this case? Give me a call anytime. Oh, Detective Jones gives you a call. Hey, you want me to go to the police station? You want me to go to the precinct and talk about this? Sure, I'll go, right? So you took the steps in helping law enforcement trying to catch the perpetrator. Do they actually have to catch the perpetrator for you to file for the U visa? No, they don't, okay? It helps, but as long as you satisfy the criteria. Now, here's the tricky part. In order for you to file the U visa, there is a form that the police has to fill out, okay? It's called the Supplement B. It's them essentially saying that, yes, this person helped us try and nab the perpetrator, and they sign off on it. And so some police stations are cool about it. Some take a little bit more convincing. After you get that, then you put in together all the other proof about the crime, about the severity, about how much you suffered, about the psychological distress, and how much you help the police, and you send it off. And that can get you legal status, a work permit, and eventually a green card, okay, for you, your spouse, your children. And it doesn't care if you're here legally. It doesn't care if you came in through the border. So it's a really cool form of protection for our clients. Something related to the U visa is something called VAWA, which came from the Violence Against Women's Act. And VAWA is kind of like a U visa, but it's for violence perpetrated against you by a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident spouse, okay? In some cases, children, okay, if you're a parent and suffering abuse, but essentially, your family member who is a U.S. citizen or an LPR, lawful permanent resident, that person has been violent towards you. Physical violence obviously counts, and also mental anguish, mental violence also will count. Police reports are important, but they're not required, like the U visa where the police station has to sign off on it. Or maybe you called the police, but then the case never went anywhere, right? But as long as you can present the case that you were battered or that you suffered. So essentially they're a little bit easier than the U visa, okay? So that unfortunately, I wish it weren't the case, but we do also help a good number of clients get VAWA. You still with me? All right, so we did family, we did humanitarian, all right? Now we're going to do employment-based. So we previously looked at the visa bulletin, and there you saw an EB category. That is for employment-based. And so there are 5 categories there, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the 5 categories mean, okay? Buckle up, let's do this. Category number 1 is the EB1. And again, the visa bulletin will tell you how long these categories are taking, depending on which category you apply for, as well as which country you come from. Why is that? Are they being discriminatory? I don't think discriminatory. It has to do with the number of people from those countries that are applying for that particular type of relief. Okay, so China, a lot of people, India, a lot of people. For some of the relief, you have Mexico or Philippines. So anyway, that's just the way it is. There's a line. They're trying to fix the system to allow, perhaps more people to apply in a quicker manner, but that's what we're looking at. So EB1. EB1 actually has 3 prongs, A, B, and C, okay? So EB1A is probably the one you hear most about. That is for someone who has extraordinary ability. Okay, somebody who is the top 5% of their field. The statute doesn't say that. This is one of Felipe's findings. Okay, based on my experience, I say you are top 5% of your field. Does that mean that everybody in the world knows who you are? No. Does that mean who everybody in the country knows who you are? No. But in a particular field, a lot of people know who you are. Maybe nationally, a lot of people do know who you are. Not everybody in that field necessarily nationally, but many people would know you. Internationally, some people know who you are based on what you've accomplished. So, you're pretty badass. You've done a great job in your field. And it has to be in the sciences, in the arts, in education, in business, or in the athletics. But between you and me, most professions we've been able to fit in there in one of the categories. All right. And how do you prove this? You prove it through prizes. You prove it through associations you've been a member of in leadership positions in that association. You prove it with books you've written. You prove it with articles you've written. You prove it with media coverage of you and your work. You prove it through any kind of innovative or original contributions you've made to the field. You've given seminars, you teach classes, you teach at the university, you do live streams, whatever it is. You have a high salary compared to everybody else in your field. And overall, you've made a big difference in the lives of your community as well as in the industry. Now, these factors, that I'm telling you, you don't have to have all of them. Okay, there are actually 10 factors, and we'll make videos about the EB1, and you only have to have 3 of them. When I say only, I'm not implying that it's easy, but at least we can focus. Most of our clients don't get all 10 criteria. They get 3, 4, maybe 5, right? But we focus on those. And with that, you can get a green card. It's still a relatively fast way to get a green card. That's EB1A. EB1B is for researchers and professors who are going to work at a university. And again, you have to show your research and how you've stood out in your field. EB1C is for a manager or an executive who works in a company abroad, and that company has an affiliate in the United States, and now the affiliate wants to send over the manager or the executive to manage a team here and to continue growing the business in the United States. So that's EB1. ABC, got it? Let's do it. EB2. EB2 is for people who have a master's degree or for people who have an exceptional ability and who have a job offer from a U.S. company. Okay, the U.S. company that has to go through a process where they show that there weren't U.S. workers who can fill a certain position, that it had to be you. EB3, same thing, but it's used for people who have a bachelor's degree and for skilled workers, for jobs that don't require a bachelor's degree. Oh my gosh, Felipe, I've been watching this video the whole time thinking you're going to talk about EB2 NIW and you're going to talk about EB3. You're going to skip it. What's wrong with you? Nothing. I had my coffee today. Don't worry about it. Actually, don't drink coffee. But NIW, all right. So EB2 has a very interesting category within. It's called the NIW, the National Interest Waiver. All right. You think I was going to miss that? What are you, a crazy mameluke? No, of course not. All right. So EB2 NIW, how do you get that? First of all, it's called a waiver because the whole requirement I just told you about of having to have an offer by a U.S. employer, that requirement doesn't apply. You're getting a waiver because you are a benefit to the national interest. You are something. You're kind of a big deal, man. But you don't have to be the top 5%, or else we'll just do an EB1 for you, which is a little faster, right? No, you're not quite 5%. You're more or less like top 20%. You're still really good. You've been at this, whatever you do, you've been at it for a few years, and you're pretty darn good. And we definitely need you here in the United States. Okay, so how do you do this? First, you have to prove one of 2 things. This is the first barrier. Okay, first barrier, you have to prove 1 of 2 things. You got to prove either that you have an advanced degree or that you have exceptional abilities. Okay. Let's do it. All right. So first, right? First prong, First way to meet the prong is advanced degree, which is a master's degree, a PhD, etc. Oh man, but I only have a bachelor's degree. Hey, I got your back, man. So a bachelor's degree can qualify as an advanced degree for purposes of the first prong of the EB2 if you also have 5 years of progressive work experience in the field of endeavor. Okay, so you got a master's, good for you. You got a PhD, good for you. You got a bachelor's, and you only have 2 years of work experience, not good for you. We'll see if you qualify here. Okay, all right. So advanced degree, bachelor's plus 5 years of progressive work experience in your field of endeavor, in the field that you're coming to work in the United States. All right, or a master or a PhD. All right, very cool. Okay, let's do that. All right, so here's a question we get. Does the bachelor's degree have to be related to the field of endeavor? Preferably, but not necessarily. I'm getting into too many details. This is supposed to be a little primer, right? See, I can't help myself. This is what we do. All right, so bachelor's, 5 years of progressive experience, master's or PhD. You got it? Then forget about this next part, okay? But here's the next part. A lot of our clients either don't have a bachelor's degree, or they have a bachelor's degree but not the 5 years experience, or they have a degree but because of the foreign equivalency, it doesn't quite equate to an American bachelor's degree, or they don't have a degree, right? Artists, athletes, pilots, a lot of them don't have bachelor's degree. They might have a degree or certificate, right, at a vocational school or something, a flight school. They don't have a bachelor's degree, but these are exceptional people. We want them here in the U.S., right? So if you don't meet it here with the advanced degree, then you have to come over with exceptional ability. And exceptional ability, there are certain criteria you have to meet. So, for example, 1, do you have a degree or certificate in your field of endeavor? So even though it's not a bachelor's degree, maybe you did study something. You went to you got a Google certificate if you're in IT. A lot of our IT guys, they don't have bachelor's degrees, but we get them at the NIW, okay? So right here, you got a degree or certificate in the field of your endeavor, okay? 2, and again, you don't have to hit all these, okay? 2, you have been doing this for over 10 years. You have 10 years of work experience and you can verify it. Good for you. Awesome, right? That's a sign of exceptional ability. You stick around for 10 years, right? With this age of so much information and so much temptation to, go after bright, shiny objects, it's kind of rare to have people that stick around in the same field for 10 years. And chances are, if they've stuck around for 10 years, they're probably pretty decent at what they do. Okay, so number 2, 10 years. Number 3, you have a license to practice that profession. Oh my goodness, but my field doesn't require that. I'm in IT. What did I tell you? You don't have to get all of them. Relax. Okay, so license if you're an engineer, if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse. Okay, or a nurse, yeah, nurse. Yes, but if you're an IT guy, if you're an athlete, if you're an artist, if you're a photographer, you don't need it. Relax, okay? So number 3 is license. Number 4, you're a member of a professional association, okay? You're a member of, the bar, if you're a lawyer, or, this, in Brazil, they call it CREA, right? Which is this association for engineers, whatever it is, right? You're a member of an association that helps people in that industry, okay? Kudos to you if you've served in leadership positions in that field, okay? But that's not a requirement for number 3. Number 3 has to be an association, or I'm sorry, number 4, that helps people in that field. And then number 5 is you have recognition by your peers. And these are great letters of recommendations that we can help draft for the case, right? And so your peers are there to recommend. And then number 6, similar evidence, right? If you have, we like to use, for example, courses. A lot of our clients, they do a lot of continuing education. They have a bunch of courses that they've done. We assemble those. Kind of a long explanation. I'm not doing a great job with these bullet points, but I hope you're enjoying this. All right, so advanced degree, bachelor's 5 years of progressive experience, master, PhD, boom, or the exceptional ability. 3 of the 6 criteria. If you meet it, all right, now you pass the first stage of Mortal Kombat and you get to come to the second stage, right? or if it's Street Fighter and you're going to take on Bison now, right? First, this is Blanca. This is Bison. All right. If you're a nerd from the 90s, you understood what I said. If not, you're probably turning this off. I get it. All right. Okay. So the second prong, it's the Danasar prong. Okay. Now let me tell you something. If you're consulting attorneys about this, okay, this is very important. And they're telling you about EB2 NIW, and it sounds good, right? And then if you want to separate the men from the boys, okay, you ask them about Danasar, all right? Danasar is the most important jurisprudence case law that we have for EB2 national interest waivers. So in other words, if your lawyer doesn't know what Danasar is, if they're like, huh, get the hell out. Just get out. Just stand up, okay? Just stand up and walk out. Shake his hand or, but leave. That's it. It's done. If you don't know Danasar, it is done, okay? Because Danasar is very important. So what did Danasar hold? Danasar went against a prior case called New York State Department of Transportation. Again, bullet points, but hey, forget it, man. I love this stuff. So, here it is. And Danasar says, the way the statute was written by Congress, okay, which is 203B, it was written in a very broad sense, okay? And so usually when Congress writes it in a broad sense, they want to be generous with the way we do this. And before, with New York State Department of Transportation, that previous case law, it was a little too rigid. It was a little too demanding. And so they defined what we need to prove. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. But after Danasar in 2016, that's really when EB2 NIW landscape really started to change. We started doing tons of them, and we've benefited families and professionals from areas that they never imagined. Like, I never imagined that was exceptional. Well, you are, my friend, and we're able to do it for you. So, and by the way, I'm going to go into Danasar, but here's something very important I have to explain. It doesn't matter what your profession is. It doesn't matter what your profession is, okay? I've done this for teachers, all right? I've done this for medical accountants. I've done this for managers, for marketing, people that do marketing, okay? But they were good. And we were able, this is about storytelling. We tell their story to where the immigration officer is looking at this and like, we can't be without this guy. We need him here. We don't want him here in Zimbabwe or Brazil or China. We want him right here, okay? All right. So it doesn't matter what profession it is, as long as you, boom, meet the first prong, Mortal Kombat, and you take on Bison, the second one, which is Danasar. Get to the point, Felipe. What's Danasar? All right. Hold your horses. So Danasar says, all right, first we're going to look at your endeavor. Just for a second, we don't care about you so much. We want to look at the endeavor. What is it that you propose to do in the United States, and why is this so great? Why should we even consider the rest of your application, right? So we're going to focus on the endeavor. So you're going to come here to be a doctor. You're going to come here to be a lawyer, engineer, an entrepreneur. But tell us a little bit more about what the endeavor would be. I'm going to set up a clinic for children with Down syndrome in Central Florida, or just tell us what the endeavor is going to be. And it doesn't have to be so so special like that. I mean, that's a lifesaver, right? It could be, I'm going to set up a business. I'm going to set up a trucking business in the United States, but of a great magnitude, right? So it has to be something special. So first, looking at the endeavor, Danasar asks, does this have substantial merit, right? Essentially, is this good for the country? That's what substantial merit is. And we find that USCIS, they're very generous with this part, because if we take on a case, that means we believe we can win it. That means we believe that we can succeed for you. And so if we take on a case, it is a good, positive, and robust endeavor. And so we rarely have, any pushback with the substantial merit. Okay, so if what you're doing is positive and you're going to benefit the community, they'll give you the substantial merit prong. The second one is a little bit more challenging. That one is called national importance. You have to prove that your endeavor is of national importance. Now, if you and I look up national importance, in a dictionary, we come up with something that, well, it's important in the national scope or something like that, right? It's very important to the country. Great. That's not really what they mean by it. And so it's become a term of art for purposes of the EB2NIW. What does national importance mean? National importance means the kind of contribution that will be felt by people and by societies outside of the realm with which you're going to normally interact. Explain that in English, Felipe. Okay. If you're coming to be a nurse, you better be bringing something special, because while it is very important to be a nurse, there are other visas that you can do. You're asking for a waiver. You're telling me that the endeavor is exceptional, and then we're going to get to you. So what's so exceptional about your endeavor? And so we've had nurses where we say, okay, yes, I know that as a clinician, I will go and extract blood and, change the sheets and, help the doctors in that hospital, and that's going to help the patients of that hospital. It's a little hard to argue that that effect or those benefits are going to be felt by people outside of the hospital. Yes, if you help my dad, I'll be happy, and then if I'm happy, my wife is happy, everybody else is happy, right? That's not really what they mean, right? So here's what we do. We look at the case and we say, okay, nurse, you're going to go, you're a great clinician, great, but you've also given trainings. You've also done a little research. And if you continue doing that, if you continue training the professionals that you come into contact with, if you continue doing research, if you continue doing something that's a little bit outside the box, that is likely to help people outside of the professionals within the hospital, with whom you will interact, okay? So they want to see a broad prospective contribution, okay? They want to see something where it's going to go outside of those who you will have immediate contact, okay? So somebody who has a YouTube channel and they're, we have a financial planner or a financial analyst, and how do you get a EB2 for this guy? Well, I mean, some of them have blogs, and they have a YouTube channel, and they educate people. And so, well, then, yeah, for sure, they're definitely benefiting a lot of people whom they've never even seen. That's the kind of endeavor that we're looking for, and that we're going to argue in order to meet the national importance prong. Got that? Cool. Let's focus on you now, okay? You said you're going to come and do this amazing thing, this great endeavor, broad perspective impact. You're going to help the kids and everything. Good for you. How do we know you can do it? So then this prong is called well-positioned. Are you well-positioned to advance the endeavor? Are you well-positioned to do what it is that you promised to do? Are you going to pull the wool over our eyes? Are you really who you say you are, right? Are you going to be able to continue doing this here in the United States? And so that's when we get into you. The endeavor was great. And the reason we argued the endeavor is because I've been doing this my whole life, or I've been doing this for 10 years, right? And so look at the results that I've produced. And that's when we get the letters of recommendation and the newspaper articles and the certificates and the news media interviews and the articles you've written and all that good stuff. And we show that you are definitely qualified to do the endeavor you said you're going to advance. Okay, so that one focuses more on you. And then the last prong is, in the totality of the circumstances, thus does this justify waiving the labor certification requirement? Does this justify waiving the requirement that you should instead find a company, and the company needs to go prove that there are no U.S. citizen workers who could fill the job, okay? In other words, if you've met all the other prongs, you're going to get this one, okay? But we still have to argue. We still have to argue that in the totality of the circumstances, look at all the good things about the endeavor and the applicant, and therefore, they deserve an EB2NIW in the positive or favorable exercise of discretion, all right? These are really fun applications. We love doing them. It's storytelling, and we've won cases where they lost in other law firms, and we've won cases where they're like, there's no way I qualify for this, but fine, I think I believe you. I've heard enough clients say that they've got it. Let me give it a try. Oh my gosh, I got it. And to see the look in their eyes when you tell them they won the case, and they're like, because a lot of these clients aren't here in America. Some of them are, but most of them are abroad. And when they win, they're like, this is for real. This is happening. I'm going to America. It's awesome. It's pretty cool. That is our fuel. That is our gasoline, because our work is not easy. We have deadlines and we have pressure and we have the administrative delays, but that's what keeps us going. These victories, man, we love them. All right. So that's the EB2 NIW. EB3 I already told you about. EB4, I will say that it's divided into two. There might be some other categories in there, but the main ones are 1, religious workers, and 2, special juveniles. Okay. I'll be brief. So with the religious workers, essentially, these are people who are member of a denomination in their home country, and that denomination has a church here, and they have at least 2 years working as a minister or in a religious vocation or occupation, and they're going to come here to continue contributing to the church. They're going to work for the church, okay? And SIJ, special immigrant juvenile status, are for young people under the age of 18 who have at least one parent has abandoned them, has abused them, has neglected them. So it doesn't have to be both parents, it's just one, okay? So stories of abuse or neglect or abandonment, they can essentially receive a green card if there's somebody here in the United States who can file for custody in family court. And once they get the custody order, they can file an immigration application with USCIS and they get a green card. Cool, so let me do that and then I can file for my mom. No, here's the thing, man. After you get this, you cannot file for your biological parents. The reason they did that is to prevent fraud, right? Oh, let me go do this, and then I'll just petition for my parents who really didn't abandon me and who really didn't abuse me, right? It doesn't work that way. Even though it's kind of not fair in the case of mom, who has always been by your side, and dad, who left or who abused you guys and then left. But it's just the way the law is written. So if you get the status, awesome. Mom is going to have to figure it out on her own. But hey, give us a call. You know, we might be able to do something for her. Domestic violence is a ground for asylum. I can't believe I didn't mention that. So there you go. It's a particular social group. Domestic violence is a ground for asylum. Just throwing that in there because I forgot to mention it. Okay. So that's EB4, religious workers, and SIJ, special immigrant juvenile status. And EB5, that is the investor visa. That is for people who invest in a project in the United States, and that project is going to create at least 10 American jobs. And then once you promise to essentially create the jobs, you invest the money, you show that the money came from a lawful source, you give them a business plan to show that it's going to create the 10 jobs, you get the first green card, and then you have to come back and get a second green card because they actually want to see that you've created the jobs. This is going to cost you about $1 million, a little bit less depending on where the project is located, okay? We have a team who has done EB5. This is a very complex area of law. This is a lot of money you're investing. This might not be the only option for you. And so if there's a cheaper option, obviously we'll do the cheaper option for you. We're not getting the $1 million. Hey, let me clarify that, okay? We're not getting the $1 million. I wish. No, it's the project, right? So it's either a project that you set up or it's a project specifically designed to help immigrants like yourselves in administering the funds and making sure that you can show the investment. These projects are called regional centers. How you doing? You doing all right? You're hanging in there? Okay, cool. So today we reviewed family immigration, right? Who can petition for who? We reviewed humanitarian immigration, asylum, U visa, the VAWA, and we also reviewed employment-based. And so when you look at the visa bulletin, there are 5 categories and some of them some subcategories in there. You know exactly, or you have a pretty darn good idea of what those categories are. And now, as you look at the visa bulletin, and as you figure this out and which options are going to be faster for you, now you probably have a pretty good idea of which immigration categories you want to focus on as you start doing consultations with a trained and experienced attorney. All right. I hope you enjoyed it. Pass it on to your friends and family if you did. If this is good information, give it a like. And guess what? I will see you next time. If you have any questions, give us a call and take care of yourselves.